Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out. Welcome to Pilatesology Book Club. We really appreciate people coming out to spend a cozy Sunday with us. This is a free meeting for all Pilates movement enthusiasts, you geeks and fans, and it's sponsored by Pilatesology in partnership with my company, Prospire, Providence Pilates Center, and Authentic Pilates. This book club is now bi-monthly. Our next book is Start With Why by Simon Sinek on Sunday, January 8th. So if you're interested, please mark that down in your calendars. My name is Nabi, and I'm the founder of Prospire, which is a software created for Pilates teachers to help independent studios take notes on their clients, keep track of experiences, and really make an overall amazing personal experience for your clients. If you ever want a free demo or any more information, I'm always here to answer questions. Today, our moderator is Elisa herself, the founder of Pilatesology. In 1997, Elisa met Romana Krzyzanowska, and learning Pilates from Romana changed her life. She created Pilatesology to bring that same body-altering, mind-blowing glory to people across the globe by sharing the work of the best teachers around the world. If you have not already, I would highly recommend checking out Pilatesology. And we're so happy to have her as our moderator for today. Our author, Reiner Grootenhuis, which we're all having problems pronouncing his last name. We're so excited to have him. He studied Pilates at the Pilates Training Institute at Body Arts and Science International, BASI, I think it's more called. And in 2011, he founded what is now the world's largest Pilates online forum on Facebook, the Pilates Contrology Forum, which has over 12,000 Pilates instructors. And I know personally, like, my mom has bought equipment from those forums and stuff. So definitely very active for the community. Yeah. And then since the beginning of 2012, he's been operating his Pilates Power Studio in Germany. And in 2014, he opened his own Pilates training program at the studio. And in the same year was appointed to the board of directors of the Pilates Heritage Congress, which is held in Joseph Pilates' birthplace in Munchenblock. Fusion block, yes. And he was also appointed Pilates master teacher by Kathy Corey in 2019. We're so happy to have him today to talk about his book on Corolla. And he also just published a book about the foot and toe corrector and is currently working on Reformer Part 2. And so now I'm going to hand it back over to Elisa to do just some quick housekeeping.
Well, the housekeeping is small today because we have a small group, but for anyone watching later, welcome. Thank you for being a part of our book club. If you guys want to just keep yourself off mute and ask any questions, you're welcome to. Hi, Gina and Deborah, who are off camera. I totally get it. If you are running about doing other things and want to listen in, we love that. So please feel free to ask questions. And Montserrat and Andrea, we're super stoked to have you here. Hi, guys. I really enjoyed this book. So Reiner, tell us about your process and how you came about to decide to write this about Corolla and how you discovered her.
Oh, yeah. I was, from day one when I started my Pilates practice, I was quite fascinated about the history. But when I started Pilates in 2005, there was not much history besides some internet pages telling always the same stories. And then when I found more and more, I always put that on my webpage, just kind of a repository for myself to have that, but at the same time sharing what I found. And when I started to then understand a little bit better what the elders did, or the master teachers, and some people call them, Carola Trier was quite interesting for me because, you know, I'm in Germany, I'm a German. Joseph Pilates was German, but Carola Trier was also German. So I found there was a specific connection between them. And then when I understood that she actually opened a studio also in New York during his lifetime, obviously with his blessing, because she got all the apparatus from him.
Mm-hmm.
I was really like, oh wow, there should be more about her. How could I find out more? And when I did the mentor program with Kathy Corey, she asked us to write at the end a kind of master thesis. And I immediately said I want to do my thesis about Carola Trier. So, and I was very lucky to then find these documents of herself in the Leo Baeck Institute, which are publicly available.
Mm-hmm.
The only caveat is that a part of it is in her handwriting.
Right.
And you have to know that she wrote with a green pencil. And then it's all black and white. So besides her writing, you are not so sure sometimes what she has written. And so it was very hard to decipher it. But and there were also then typewritten pages. And you had sometimes the handwritten text and the typewritten text. And then you were kind of, okay, that's not exactly the same what's standing here. And then she was starting to write again on these typewritten pages.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was all fascinating to me. So, and I just loved it to dig in deeper. And I mean, yeah, that's I think that's the background for me, the starting point.
Yeah. So how did you find those pages at the Leo Baeck Institute? Was it just a Google search that helped you, or did you know to go?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it I was just Googling her name and was looking into all the links and seeing, I mean, if you would type in Romana Krasnowska, I think you would get much more links because she has a much huger following than Carola Trier. Yeah. And she has taught many more teachers than Carola Trier. So I think, therefore, it would be very hard to then by Google come to the research results where she is mentioned in archives. Right. But for Carola Trier, there are not so many people actually who are following her line, to say it that way. And therefore, I think it was much easier to get to the point where these archives were shown. And one is New York Public Library and one is Leo Baeck. But New York Public Library at that time wasn't available for me because, I'm in Germany. Flying to New York is not the cheapest thing in the world and not the easiest. And it seemed also very complicated to get the right permits to actually go into the archives. And they wrote on several pages, like you have to request beforehand, and then they will bring it to you in boxes, but only if. So during that time, I did not have the chance to review this material. That was the reason then when I had finished the book, published it, I was contacted by people who were taught by Corolla. That was my starting point of re-evaluating what I have found out so far. And then I wrote back and forth in New York Public Library, and at a certain point they agreed to scan the material for me, at least a big chunk. And then I depublished the book, actually, until the moment when you said we should do this book club. And I thought, I really need to go through the materials. And that takes ages, because it's all letters and letters and letters. And, and you're reading them, and it becomes a month, it becomes a year again, it becomes 2 years. It's so easy to get lost again in that. So thank you for inviting me, and being the reason for republishing it now, finally again. So
tell me, in your second readings and the readings that you've done over and over of her letters and documents, have you learned new things or seen things that you maybe didn't see before?
Yes, because I think it's always the question what you keep, So I can tell you that my father-in-law died 2 years ago, and we had to relocate my mother-in-law in a nursing home, I think is the name. Mm-hmm. So you then have to go through all the documents of a person. Yeah. And you always wonder, what have they kept? Have they kept photographs? So for example, my father-in-law kept all his LPs, okay? Now, Corolla kept obviously the part where she wrote her own autobiography, and somehow this landed at the Leo Baeck Institute, for reasons I do not understand, because her last will says differently. And in the New York Public Library, I found a lot of business letters. So these were repetitive letters where actually they all go in the same way. It's always like a lawyer writes to Corolla saying, I have a client, and this client now wants his money back for your classes from his insurance company. But for that very reason, I need to have your credentials and your license and whatsoever. And then Carola writes back, I'm teaching the method of the late Joseph Pilates. And I always told prior to that that I'm not a licensed physiotherapist, but I have a massage license. And it's kind of weird, you know. She kept all these official documents. Yeah, official documents, and they are repetitive. But I think if you think about, she was kind of a one-woman show, you know, so her husband had another job. So she did all these letters and writing back and forth on a typewriter by herself. So besides teaching, besides running the studio.
Yeah,
and that was new to me.
Precious, I guess, after a while, because you've done all that work. And in the US, keeping your documents for tax purposes, you're supposed to do it for 7 years or something. So I could see her just never throwing it all away.
Yes.
It's so much work. But yeah, it's interesting that it ends up in an archive, and it tells us something about her life too, I guess.
I agree, yeah. And tells us a lot also about her very good relations with the doctors, because there are many letters where there is a referral to her from orthopedic clinic or a doctor. And so it's very fascinating to see how they trusted her with their clients.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for those who just entered, feel free to take yourself off of mute and ask any questions at any time if you like, and I'll open it up to questions right now if anyone has one. If you haven't had a chance to read this book yet, it's wonderful. I really enjoyed hearing about Corolla and her life. And I think what I'd love to know more about, Reiner, is when you studied the photos that she took, because her photos, there are variations that are different, right, than in Joseph Pilates' books. And of course, her body is different too. But what did you think about that? Like here, let's see.
I think when we start to study the photos of Joe first, let's start from there. I think let's take the reformer sequences and the photos we have of him doing it. Yeah. I think we see, as you know, I have not been taught in the Romana lineage, but I have had the chance to have many workshops with Brett Howard and also with Moses. So I try to feminize myself a little bit, but for sure not enough. And but what I see is that already Joe on his photos did some things differently than they are often taught in our days from different lineages, to say it that way. Yeah. And when I then start to compare, for example, let's take the upstretch. And
that's what I was just pulling out. That's so interesting. So here, I'll show it to everyone.
Let's see. And then I had the chance actually to learn the upstretch from Deborah Lesson, who was taught by Carola Trier. So that was the feeling of the upstretch she gave me and the understanding of the drop of the head. And then when I compare that to Joseph Pilates' pictures, I actually find it very similar, to be honest. So I found it like, and she herself thought of herself as a person staying very true to what he taught. Yes, so she was really trying not to differ too much from his methodology. Although I think she, for example, was the one putting the box on the reformer for the stomach massage series. At least that's my understanding from all the stories I've heard about that. It's not in this book, and it's not in the photo series, but For example,
So you mean the
Lolita.
short box, putting it behind, putting it over the, as though you were going to do short box, and then using it to push against for
Exactly.
massage,
So,
right.
for example, Lolita, as you know, she was taught by Corolla first, and then went on to go to Joe and work there as an assistant. And by accident, she used the method of using the short box behind her back on the short massage for the, and then she actually he was shouting at her and saying, "What are you doing there?" Yeah, and so that was obviously a point where he was thinking differently than she was, and I'm not sure whether at some point in the 10 years where she was in his studio, he might have taught it to her like that, and he has forgotten about it. I mean, you know, that can happen. Right. I mean, Ron Fletcher once said, I've forgotten more Pilates than others ever have learned. Yeah. Yeah, you see, we don't know. We just don't know. Or was it her intuition of doing it with one client and the others copied it? It's very hard to say when she differs, why she differs. Did she differ by her own accord, or did she differ because Joe taught her differently? Right. Because she was so flexible.
Right. Right. And that's a useful, it's a modification maybe that's useful when you have someone who needs to feel the strength of where they need to push from. So maybe it was something that he taught that was useful only up to a certain point, and that's why he was upset when
it might be. Absolutely. I don't know. I mean, it's really, I think as long as we all agree that we should not shout at each other when someone is doing that way or the other way, I think it's fine for me, you know? So, yeah.
So here's another one that I just have a question for anyone who's watching and is familiar with the exercise, the long back stretch. She's doing it with the very straight arms. And I've heard other people who have access to archives and know about this exercise, that it was done without bending the arms. In Joe's original pictures, you can see here she's never bending her arms, and in others. And then the story goes that in Romana's program, they changed it to bending the arms because they felt that this was it's a lot of pressure on the shoulders. So I don't know. You didn't come across anything with that, did you? In anyone's story?
So I mean, for me also the arms look quite hyperextended, and for when she's doing it, right. So it's like, I don't know if she would be my client, if I would be very happy, because you know, but. It's super challenging and heavy to do it that way. Okay. The unfortunate thing is I cannot read in parallel the chat. I just have to say that because it's just popping up there, and I'm on iPad. No, I you know what I did? In the beginning, when I first published the book, I wrote a lot of stuff to each exercise about the differences. And then when I gave it to proofread to some people, they said, that doesn't make sense. I don't understand it. And I thought, you know what? Let's keep them as an archival picture for you to get, to get a new idea. I mean, I think you need for some exercise, for example, take the sideways sitting stretch, okay? So I know that Romana taught a similar thing, but when I see people doing the exercises, usually the shoulder is controlled in this position here up there.
Right.
But when I was with Deborah, I did the workshop with Deborah, she taught me, and this is also substantiated by others who were taught by Corolla, that the shoulder needs to ride up. And actually, this gives you a very nice stretch down here on the serratus anterior region. So, you know, we never know who had the right one or who got it wrong. And maybe Joe taught it to her that way at certain days because he felt she was too tight there. And for money, he said, no, keep your shoulder here, please. and that's it. And both
Yeah.
have them given to us in their way.
Yeah, I think there's always such a gray area, and a different body needs different things, like you're saying. So there's probably different reasons to do both. Monica was saying that on the long backstretch that, yeah, she's tried it and it's very challenging to do it with straight arms. I've tried it too. And yeah, I enjoy it. There's something different that you get out of it, and you understand the name perhaps better without the bending of the arms. So I don't know, it's a fun thing to try if your shoulders are healthy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's but your shoulders have to be healthy.
Exactly. So I would love to hear your thoughts a little bit on Carola's life before she left Germany, and to talk a little bit about that, because for anyone who hasn't had a chance to read the book yet, I think it will really encourage you to read it. It's a fascinating story. She underwent so much hardship and was really just a powerful woman in how she overcame it. So will you talk a little bit about that, what you learned?
Sure. So I think we as a background, we have to understand that she was Jewish from the background, and that her father was very active in the Jewish community here in Germany. He even was a teacher at the synagogue. I don't know the English word for that, but he wasn't a rabbi, but he was a teacher, and he kept on teaching later on. So, and he had contact with really to very, very famous Jewish teachers. So teachers, when I was in school, so I was baptized, not a Catholic, but the other one, Martin Luther, so evangelisch, it's in German, but I don't know the English word for that. Protestant, I think that's the word, Protestant. Yeah. And even we learned about these guys like Martin Buber, etc. So these guys were famous in our teaching we got in school. So they were really seen as really iconic figures. So it was really for me like, wow, okay, her father was a friend of them, and he was in close contact, and they were discussing Jewish philosophy together. This background is important because we are in a time pre-Nazi regime, but an upcoming Nazi regime exactly at the time when she goes to the Laban school. I mean, Laban is the guy we know who had met Joe, and they had they shared kind of pupils. So and Joe later told that Laban took stuff from him. We don't know if that's true, but anyhow, during his Hamburg times, and so. When she was very young, her family was quite rich. And you can see that because, for example, when she got sick and her mother got sick, they just rented an entire hotel floor in Switzerland for them to recover for weeks. So you can't do that if you have not a lot of money to rent a whole floor for yourself. But she was struggling. She was really struggling in school. And the parents were, as she called it, they had very modern views, and they took her from school because they felt that she might not be good for her, to say it that way, because there is a constant theme in her life, which is a little bit of suicidal thoughts. Yeah, so it comes through at certain points once and one more, and even her nephew later spoke about that dark side of her. So this suicidalness, and she, I think, and sometimes says also, if they wouldn't have done that, she wouldn't have survived it. So she got private tutoring after that, and the Familie Selig, they were obviously quite kind people. They helped her a lot in her development as a human, as she said. And the great thing was when she then met her first dance teacher, were many, Hildenbrand, which taught a grotesque form of dance. I would say, we would maybe say modern dance, yeah. Okay. So very expressive dance. Then that was her connection where she said, oh, this really changed my life. this really gave me purpose. That really gave me the ability now to be in my body and connect with myself in a different way. And that one, then she started to really go to dance-specific schools like the Laban School and the Volkwang School in Essen, which is very, very famous in Germany, especially for dance people. But that is then 1933, 1934, and she kind of felt that she, as a Jewish person, might need to leave Germany. And she left Germany then to France. And tried to survive there. And I think that this is the extreme turning point of when you are coming from a rich household and you had everything, and then you go to another foreign country and suddenly you need to survive on your own. And survival for a German in France wasn't that easy. And there were no high-class dance jobs for her. So she really needed to then work at revues, and as a showgirl, kind of, half naked or even fully naked at some points. And kind of very hungry, very, very often extremely hungry, nothing to eat, trying to live from some yogurt and some bread, and that's all. So, and trying to get one job after the other. And from this situation, she then found her niche, which was this roller skating and doing acts on roller skate. And then her fiancé, her later fiancé, Marcel Neidorf, I think, or Nüdorf, it's hard for me to say how to pronounce it correctly. He was the guy who then showed her the practice of contortionism. And she's then started to practice that, although she was at an age where you usually wouldn't be able to change careers to contortionism, but she was able to do it with very, very hard practice and develop these acts on roller skate as a contortionist. And that was her, thereby she was really able to make a living and to become popular and to become a kind of star. At least it was good enough to survive. But then when the Germans started to come to France, especially to Paris, there was exactly the same situation, and I find it very fascinating, as Joe had when he was in England. Right. So Joe was in the UK as a German, not as a soldier, but as a German trying to survive in a circus environment. I mean, thanks to Kathy Strack, I mean, we learn more and more. Every author adds a little bit. I mean, like, Eva Rinke and prior to her,
we find more and more documents, and it's amazing.
Yes, it's just amazing. It's wonderful. So we know now for certain that he worked in this artistic genre there in Blackpool, which is on the west side of the UK, more up north, and she did the same. And he was rallied up as a man and had to go then to a prison for quite a long time. And she was rallied up and brought into first in a stadium, and then they were brought to a camp Gurs. And while the Joseph Pilates, he was he was in a camp where they were allowed to box, they were allowed to learn English, everything. So it was not comfortable, but it was okay. And if you look at the pictures later of the Isle of Man, you can see that it was organized. Right. It was terrible, but it was very well organized. They had clean clothes. They were organizing themselves pretty well. And so that's kind of the opposite. Camp Gurs was like mud flood, it's like a tent in the mud. Wow. And that was really horrible. I think that was kind of one of the moments in her life, which also drastically changed her, first rich, hungry, poor,
Right.
but then you're just nothing. You're
Right.
and
Like a
that's the way
refugee
she describes
camp.
it.
Yeah.
You are nothing. You're not even seen as a human being.
And
You know?
there was very little food there for the time she was there as well, right?
Yeah, but her fiancé Marcel, he followed her and he was able to sneak in food. So that was okay. But the hygienic circumstances were incredible. So and I've read about similar stuff which happened after the Second World War was finished here in Germany, the Rheinwiesen, where people were interned and they were just digging holes to survive. I mean, that's kind of the vibe I get from the pictures I've seen, and they have a museum now there, and it's very, very fascinating and very, very dark at the same time. I mean, it's kind of, yeah. And then when the Germans came closer and closer to Campkurs, there was a moment where the camp was less organized, so everybody who wanted to flee could flee, which was great. And then
and that's when she got out.
Yeah. And
so sorry to interrupt, but how long was she in this camp in France for, this internment camp?
I think only months, not that long, but again, from personal experience, when I speak to people, for example, I'm a psychologist from training, and who have been, for example, in a psychiatry for weeks, that is a changing point in your life. Like, you will never forget what happened to you.
Right.
Yeah. Even if it would be for 2 days, it would be still, you would still have that. Yeah, we call it now post stress syndrome, right? So
traumatic stress.
Yeah,
It would be very easy to thank you, Andrea. Andrea actually mentioned something, and I'll bring that up in a sec, but it would be very easy to die in that situation. Even if you have enough food, if you get an infection, forget it. There's no one to help you.
Yeah, I agree. The problem always with numbers and how long is that she wrote just the years on and then sometimes the month, but then when you try to figure out if that can actually be true, sometimes they just doesn't add up. So sometimes I'm pretty sure that she did not remember correctly. Yeah, because then okay, when were the Germans coming to Paris? How does that fit to that? So it's kind of, sometimes you have to say that when she was 80, she might have not remembered that well.
The dates,
the
that
dates.
Makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah. And it happened, so she was there. Does it really matter that she got the date right or wrong? But
exactly. So we don't know exactly. She tells it. I mean, in the book, it's just, I only have written in the book at this point what she has written about it. I've not added anything besides some photos I got from the Campkurs museum guys, kindly enough from them, and so yeah.
And did she? So her fiance was French. Marcel was French, and he managed to get her food. And
I think he is French. Marcel would be for French, French, and he loses later his French status, which also, but his wife, I think, was German. Because he was already married,
Right.
And he wasn't. So they
could actually be from anywhere in there, because Marcel could be a Swiss name. It could be anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was asked that question once, and I was like, I haven't found anything about it. I mean, he is mentioned, for example, in a book about the Resistance, because his fate was really, really cruel. As you know, you haven't read it, but for the others, I mean, he had to stay back when she went to America, first of all, and he was really the love of her life. A, B, obviously, I think she also had something to do with the Resistance, because she writes down that she had to throw away a lot of documents, which otherwise would have brought her in big trouble.
Mhm.
And then we know from another book of a person who is very familiar with about the resistance in France, we learned that Marcel Najdorf actually was in resistance and was caught by the Germans, and then under folter, under torture, he gave obviously away some names. And that was enough that after the war was over, he was imprisoned for his entire lifetime, until death, with the loss of all rights as a civilian. That is so incredible. I mean, so I don't know if I would know if under torture,
Right.
what I would say. Under torture, you might say everything. I have no idea. So I find it extremely cruel to imprison this person for his lifetime. And I think that's also the reason why later on the friends of Marcel wrote to Carola and asked her for money to help out with finding a place to bury him at a cemetery.
Super tragic and sad and
unbelievable. I mean, also for her, it's kind of, after all the stuff she has gone through, once more, it's kind of, she uses even this phrase, once more a miss, but not for that. It's actually when she tried to visit her parents on a ship on their way to the US. But she uses this wording of once again a miss. So it's like the topic of her life. Boy.
And she doesn't ever see her parents again from that trial.
Later, in the US.
She does. Yes, she does.
In the US, they reunite. But then she has to work in the US. So she's on tour.
Right.
Yeah, from one town to the other, trying to again make a living.
So I just want to give a moment for anyone who'd like to ask a question. And if you're thinking about it, you can definitely unmute yourself and ask. Andrea had a comment before she had to go teach a client that on the long backstretch exercise that we were talking about, which is pictured in her book with straight arms and no bending of the elbows. She was just mentioning that in her opinion, with the fingers facing the body, holding the foot bar, that's to go down and up and put all that pressure on that glenohumeral joint. It's just too much stress. And I think that was the reason it was changed in most exercise, in most training programs. But yeah,
I agree.
It's a lot.
I even had a person in my training program. I mean, really, not many people have heard in my career as a Pilates teacher, but this person actually hurt herself doing the exercise with the bend arms. So if you're fragile up there, or you have something already, it can be just over the top, just this once.
Because it's really putting that joint out of its little cap of the socket. So it's a lot.
Very hard. But she wasn't a contortionist. She could do it.
Certainly. And you can see in Carola's picture that her arms are absolutely hyperextended, and it's clear that was her whole body. She just had either stretched out her ligaments or they were already that way when she was growing up. Does anyone have a question? Feel free to unmute.
Dina just wrote something about how tall she was.
Tiny.
I agree. I mean, we have photos, and then there's again a little bit of problem then with can you share these photos, can you not? But there are photos, a lot of photos, in the New York Public Library, and I have them. And she's sitting beside Joe, and I think Joe, we know, wasn't huge either. So I would say he was like 165. I can only do the metric system, sorry.
I think it was 5'4". Am I right, Gina? That he was pretty small. He was pretty.
5'4" is then in centimeters. So let me see.
I had no idea he was that small. I'm shocked.
I think he was very short. Maybe 5'4" to 5'6" is what I come up with in my head.
Wow.
5 feet.
And it sounded to me from everyone that I've spoken to that Corolla was actually very small too.
Okay. But that would be fair. That would be like my height. I don't think so, because that would be one. Oh, it's in yards. Sorry.
Oh,
Wrong.
can I introduce you to someone?
Yes.
Toby Towson has just popped in. He's a client of mine, and he worked with Corolla. He has
Oh,
some very
no.
entertaining stories of her.
Amazing. Let's hear
Toby,
it, Toby.
can you get your picture in?
I'm going to plug in my
While
computer
he's
before it
figuring
dies.
this out, I want to tell you, you can go to Toby's website. He's the alphabet
Toby
dancer.
Towson,
He is
yeah?
76 and still stands on his hands.
Oh, wow.
He's quite in
Oh, hi,
character.
Toby.
There he is. There he is. Toby,
Hi.
meet the group. And
But you have to unmute yourself, I think, Toby.
yeah, you have to unmute. Yeah, unmute. You're muted. Toby, you're muted.
Toby, can you unmute on the bottom left of your screen? There should be a little mute, a little microphone.
He's trying to figure
there.
it out.
You got
You
it.
hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Well, good. I swam 2/3 of a mile this morning. I woke up and I didn't know that the time changed, so I got an extra hour. And then I came and I took Tony Williams' ballet bar, which is really not easy anymore. But I've got a rehearsal in another hour, so I'm at a coffee shop downstairs from the studio. And I got
Wow.
your message, Diana, so I'm glad you reminded me.
Very much gracious.
Let me walk. I'm sort of in a crowd, or
It's okay, wherever you'd like to hang
Corolla
out.
stories, and you have to do your imitation of her.
well, that's that only goes so far. But well, let's see. I met her because I broke my knee as a tumbler, and I had anterior cruciate ligament surgery, and I had a really smart orthopedic surgeon who told me about Pilates and Corolla. So I went to her, and she, I think she instantly liked me because I was an acrobat, and she had been an acrobat on skates. She was an acrobatic roller skating contortionist, all of the above. And I stood on my hands for her in the studio, and she liked that. And so she gave me a discount. I think I paid $14 a session, but that was 50 years ago. And so it was probably $28 or $30 to do a regular session with her in those days. And well, it was a big help. It got my knee back in shape, and she reprimanded me more than once. Even though she liked me, I walked into the studio once, and she said, "Good God, Mr. Towson, you walk like an elephant. Leave the studio and come back in like a human being."
That's amazing.
So I realized I was kind of clomping around, and I left and I walked in very softly, and she said, "That's better." And I always remembered that when I came into the studio, I didn't walk with much stomping. And let's see, the other time I got yelled at was I was on the Cadillac, and she was giving me special attention and putting my legs in a strap or something like that. And I don't know if you can see this. Wait a minute, I put my hands behind my head like this while she was getting my legs ready. And she says, "Good God, Mr. Towson, don't give me this. You're not here to relax. You're here to work." I don't think she said I think she actually said, "God damn it, Mr. Towson." Known to curse once in a while. She was a very thin woman, but she had a loud voice when she needed it. And I'm only sorry I didn't stay in touch with her. I had 2 sessions. I had 2 rounds with her. I went for several weeks at a time twice. And I just, as soon as I was healthy and I didn't have to go there, I didn't anymore. And I should have stayed in touch and invited her to see performances I did, but I didn't. I was young and stupid and egotistical and all of the above.
Do you
So I'm
have
sorry,
a memory of how tall she was?
She wasn't very tall, maybe, you know, at least 5 feet, but not much more. Maybe 5'3". Hard to say. She didn't weigh very much, that's for sure. But she did tell me stories. I read her story, I guess, in that book you guys are reading, but she actually told me that she escaped. She didn't know anything about the Nazis. She was completely naive. She had a male partner that was not her lover, but was a good friend. And they did a routine on skates together. And he knew he was smarter than she was, or more educated. And he realized what was going on in Germany, and he was not Jewish. She was Jewish. So he warned her what was going on. He brought her up to speed and said, "You've got to get out of Germany. You cannot stay here. It's not safe." And he booked a tour to France before the war started. And she never went back to Germany. She went from France to England. That's how she escaped the death camps. So she was very, very grateful to her partner for being more with it than she was, and letting her know what was happening in Germany.
Do you remember his name?
No, I don't. I never knew it. But I think she was so flexible, and I imagine she had an injury because of the extreme flexibility and how hard she was working. And that's probably what got her connected to Joseph. She heard about him and went to him to get over an injury or something. And she liked it so much. That's what she ended up doing.
What was it like in her studio? Like, what were the lessons like? And did you ever see her move?
Not really. She just walked around helping people. There were maybe 3 reformers and 1 Cadillac and a chair and a little bit of space for mat work, but not much space on the floor at all. It was mostly equipment. And I took once, like regular, once I learned the ropes and I knew what I was doing, she would just sort of supervise, and I would come in and go through a whole routine on the reformer. And one day I did very badly because Gelsey Kirkland was right next to me. She's a very famous ballerina from New York City Ballet. And I couldn't take my eyes off her or think about my own body, because I just wanted to stare at Gelsey, I knew how strong she must be, but she looked so tiny, and like her body was made out of chiffon or something. I said, I can't believe she can stand on point and do multiple pirouettes and jumps and all this stuff. I know she does, but I didn't even meet her. I just stared at her. I can't think of much else, but.
Well, we would love to hear a little bit more about Corolla, although Reiner, I think, do you have questions for Toby? Because Reiner is the author of the book.
Is this the author?
He's the author of the book.
Yes.
We communicated on email, and then I stopped, or you stopped.
We should continue, Toby.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about.
By the way, Toby, I can tell you the name of the guy was Ronnie. She was fleeing together with him to Paris. And Ronnie had made arrangements for them in Paris for a show. So.
Yes. Yeah. Is he still living?
Oh, I don't even know his last name.
Okay, yeah, it'd be hard to look up.
Somebody did ask, though.
She wasn't that old when she died. I was surprised, because I thought that when I knew her, I thought she was 80 years old. She looked old. And then
when were you there again? Tell us.
How old was she when she passed away?
I would say 87, right? Because she was born 1913 and died 2000.
Oh, died in 2000. Okay, so I knew her 20 years before that. So she was in her 70s, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 1980. That's. I mean, that is already close to
Not
retirement.
no, I was closer to 73 when I knew her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Did you meet in 1973 because
roughly.
her husband died in 1970, according to. Did she ever talk about her husband?
No, she didn't. I don't think he was alive when I met her.
No,
I
was
went to
dead.
New York, and I was living full time in New York in 1971, and it was within a year or two that I hurt my knee and went to her.
Ah,
So I would
okay,
say
cool.
mid 70s at the latest.
And did she happen to mention Joseph Pilates to you? Like, did she tell stories or anything?
I mean, I knew that she had been in the studio with him. That was clear.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, at that point, there were only 3 or 4 Pilates studios in the entire world, and they were all in Manhattan.
Right.
So it hadn't grown, you know, Kathy, somebody, I knew all their names once, but
Kathy
the one,
Grant.
Kathy Grant, Ramona, and some guy. Those were the only 3 I'd heard about, but it started growing pretty quickly.
Amazing. Do you remember what the exercises were like with her? We're all Pilates teachers, so of course we want to know all the details of what her hands were like and the equipment. Do you remember anything of that? Was the equipment different than what you use now?
No, I haven't done reformer since I did a duet with Diana. That was 10 years ago, probably. And it felt like the same thing. I have an ancient reformer at my house that's made out of wood and is a little bit bigger than what I see in today's world. And I'd like to refurbish it. Must be worth a fortune because
it appears to be an archival reformer.
Wow.
Yeah. What's his name? Pure Joe. Michael Rooks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that it's similar to that design. Of course, Toby's is ancient, like he said. It looks like the stuff Sean Gallagher posts.
Wow. So does it have the eagle feet, the bird feet, or
it does not. No, those were designed by a friend of mine though, named Gary Gaffoon.
Wow.
He did those mostly with you guys familiar with Gyrotonics?
Mm-hmm.
The Romanian, I think he's Romanian, Julio.
Mm-hmm.
He had a bunch of cloth,
Clawfoot.
eagle and clawfoot machinery that my friend Gary Gaffoon made for him.
But yours is basically it's a wood
heavy, weighs a ton.
And the shoulder block is kind of a curve.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Wow, fascinating. You'll have to send us a picture of it. Yeah.
Where do you teach?
I'm in the US. The website that I run is called Pilatesology.com. And we love to have history and interviews like this on our site. So people can.
What city are you in?
I'm in Los Angeles, Redondo Beach, Hermosa Beach.
You're out there with my friend Rasta. My best friend directs the Debbie Allen Dance Academy.
Oh, amazing.
I was out there a few weeks ago.
That's fantastic.
We could have met.
Does anyone else have questions for Toby? Reiner, do you have anything else you wanted to add? We're running up on the end of our hour.
Okay. Well, Reiner, I'm so happy to meet you, and thank everybody. Thank you, Diana, for thinking of me. And
sorry it was late.
I'm glad it worked out. Thank you.
I will contact you. I have your email still. So
okay,
it was 2000.
please do. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we can always update the book. So
I'm still dancing too. I'm going to be in a Nutcracker in a few weeks.
Oh, amazing.
That's Drosselmeyer. An acrobatic Drosselmeyer.
Clearly, dance was the right choice for you because you look.
Yeah. Oh, I never looked back. I never doubted it. Nope. Been a good life. Been very nice. Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you so much, Toby.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for stopping in.
Bye.
Yes.
Wow. What a treat, you guys.
Unbelievable.
So go to his
Diana,
website. Go to
if the
Alphabet
timing works out,
Dancer.
Diana, I'll see you tomorrow if the timing works out.
Okay, I already put you in class.
Bye.
Hi, Toby. That's so incredible. I'm writing it down, Alphabet Dancer, and I'll add that to
Yeah, a lot of
our-
his work that he did, he was a 6-time national gymnast champion on floor. That was before they did all of, the men did all around. So nobody has beat his record because of that.
incredible. I wonder if it was the Pilates that helped. I don't know.
Well, no, that was collegiate. That was prior to Pilates.
Got it.
But I'm
Got
sure,
it.
yeah. But
That
he's
was
still
why he
doing
needed the
Pilates.
Pilates.
It's helping now. He's still
Right.
on his hands.
That's incredible.
He performed with Fresh Academics
Hmm.
just recently with his daughters. It's hip hop types, not hip hop, whatever that kind of dancing is.
Mhm.
I'm dating myself, but he did it with his daughters on stage.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, he's
Also,
crazy.
yeah, great guy.
I have a question for someone who's here, Gina Papalia. I did a little interview with one of Gina's clients who was a student of Naja Corey's.
Oh, wow.
Did Naja work with Corolla, or I don't remember her connection to Joe? Unmuting.
Unmute. Okay. Why is it so hard to find the unmute button?
What was it?
I don't know, and I'm going to ask that question
Yeah.
and see if they know any answers and find out. And I think what's interesting is asking these people who have worked with some of the elders, did they talk about Joe? And that's fascinating, right? And I want to know, like what you said, was she a hands-on person, or it sounded like she was obviously in control of the session, because she would say, when you're doing it right and wrong, even if however she would say it. But I don't know. I don't know that answer, but I will ask for sure.
Okay, cool. We'll
Yeah.
have to have her on. Maybe we can do one of these calls just with her to explore all of her memories.
Yes, actually, there were 2 of them. They have 2 women that used to both work with her for like 20 years.
Cool.
So that would be, definitely the 2 of them could spark some memories, I'm sure.
All right.
I mean, at least in the book of Kathy Strack, she says that Dolores Corey, a native New Yorker and former dancer, ran the new studio. She was a star student and teaching assistant for Joe. So
Yeah.
that is at least my understanding. So I think she probably knows about that. So I don't think that she was actually in connection with Corolla besides knowing her. I think they knew all.
It was a
Each
small
other.
world in those times.
Small
right?
word. Doesn't mean they loved each other, but
On the subject of people who talked about Joe, I had a client in New York City that knew Joe or worked with him, and I was giving her mat, and I said, cross your arms, cross your legs, sit down proudly. She said, "Oh, Joe would have loved that."
That's
and
amazing.
at the time, it didn't mean anything to me, and now it does.
Wow. Wonderful session today, you guys. That was so much fun to hear all of your stories, Reiner, and then to have Toby arrive, Diana. Thank you so much.
Unbelievable.
Well, I loved the book, and he loved the book. So thank you for
so
writing
much.
it.
Yeah, if
Thank
anybody
you.
hasn't had a
you.
chance to read it yet, pick it up, because it's just a really lovely read and it carries you along. And I'm just grateful for knowing more about Corolla's life.
Me too.
Ramona used to make jokes about Corolla. She would say, "Oh yeah, she would call. She needed springs now. Bring them over, and I'll replace them." And she said she never did.
Oh,
But it was all in good spirit. Nothing. She didn't like Bonnie Fletcher, and you knew it. But she liked Corolla.
she liked Corolla. She obviously did. They had worked for her for many years.
Yeah,
so.
she did.
That's cool. Well, again, thank you all so much for being here today.
Thank you
Thank you, Reiner.
for organizing.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
look forward to our next interview. We're going to bring in some more interviews as well as books now, I think. That'll be really fun.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay.
All
have a
right.
great
Thank
Sunday, you guys.
Bye-bye.